Hey friends, Catherine here from Research Rockstar. Thanks for joining me today. And today I'd like to talk about job opportunities for people who are in the market research and insight space. And today's specific topic about job opportunities has to do with whether or not your best next job opportunity would be with a client side organization or a supply side organization. This topic actually came up a few days ago. I was hosting a webinar on career planning for market research and insights professionals, and during the Q&A session this question came up and got a lot of interest, so I promised the attendees that I would follow up by diving a little bit deeper into the answer. Now, I do want to point something out. When we are talking about whether or not you're going to pursue opportunities that are either supply side or client side, I do want to point out that things have been changing. 10 years ago, there was a huge difference in the type of work that was done by supply side organizations versus client side organizations. But things have really changed. So, for example, 10 years ago, if you were looking at market research jobs that were more on the client side, your job that you may have been applying for would likely have included a lot of vendor management. That is, there were a lot of client side market research and insights teams that would partner or outsource to full service market research agencies. Now, while there are still a lot of client side organizations that do that, increasingly we see client side organizations doing more research in house. So, if you apply for client side opportunities, be aware that there is a bit of a continuum. And so you'll want to ask the employers to be really clear, is this a job where I would be doing research from start to finish, or am I primarily going to be managing outside suppliers? Either of those situations can be fine depending on what your interests are, but obviously it's a very different kind of work. 10 years ago, if you wanted to be a hands-on start to finish person who was doing, involved in all phases of the research on a day-to-day basis, your best bet would have been to work at a market research supplier, a full service market research agency. But again, those things have changed. Still, there are today important differences between the job opportunities at market research suppliers, that is, full service market research companies or agencies, and the opportunities that are at um, on the corporate side, on the client side, say working on an insights team or in a market research team, or increasingly inside a market intelligence team, for example. So let's take a look at what your choices may be. So if you're somebody who's thinking you might be looking for a new job opportunity soon and you're trying to decide, should I specifically be pursuing opportunities on the supply side or the client side, here are some suggestions for criteria you can use to help make that decision. First of all, think about what your company size preference is. Are you somebody who likes to work for really large companies? Are you somebody who prefers really small companies or something in between? If you prefer to work for medium to large companies, in general, your best bet is going to be pursuing opportunities in corporate research and insights. So, for example, if you are interested in working for large companies, you might apply for jobs where you would be on the insights team inside of a big brand that makes, say, consumer electronics or consumer goods or an insurance company, for example. So, a lot of big corporations, a lot of big brands do have pretty decent sized market research and insights teams. It's pretty unusual for small companies on the client side to have large market research and insights teams. So there aren't as many of those opportunities. Of course, this is just a generalization and there are exceptions. I know of a handful of what I would consider small companies, so companies that have less than $50 million a year in revenue, I would kind of define as small. There are some cases where companies of that size do have a market research department, but it is usually a market research department of one. Now, being a market research department of one is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a different thing than being part of a team. So if you do look at company size as a criteria, think really carefully about what you want that to feel like for you. If you enjoy working for small and medium sized organizations, maybe you want to have a situation where you feel like you've got more influence on company strategy, or you have more involvement in the planning for the organization, or you just like the feel of a smaller or medium-sized organization, you may be better off working at a market research supplier. There are a lot of really wonderful full-service market research companies that are small to medium. There are tons of them. Now, are there exceptions? Yes, there are a handful of very large market research suppliers, companies that are over, say, 500 million a year in revenue. But there are only a handful of those. So there are some opportunities there, but they're very, very specific. In general, if you're interested in working for a small, medium organization, market research supplier may be a better bet than working on the client side. The next criteria to think about is where you want your expertise to be. If you want to become an expert as a researcher who has a great deal of subject matter expertise in a specific product category, working on the corporate side can actually often be your best bet. Again, there are exceptions, but in general, corporate side can be great. Earlier in my career, I worked in market research at Motorola, and it was great for me because I worked at the part of Motorola that was in the telecommunications industry, and I really liked that industry. I was fascinated by the technology and the applications, and I was really enjoying doing B2B research at that point in my career. And so for me, working at Motorola was a great opportunity for me to really develop some very deep subject matter expertise in doing research related to telecommunications. So if you really want to become a expert in a specific product category, a specific vertical industry, corporate research may be your best bet. Again, that's a generalization. There are some market research companies out there that focus on specific industries. They're not as common, but there are some select few. In general, though, your best bet is going to be on the corporate side. What if you want to become an expert in a specific demographic group? Maybe you want to be somebody who specializes in doing research with retirees, or you want to do research with moms, or you want to be somebody who specializes in research with people who are from particular parts uh, of the world, specific geographies, or maybe you're interested in doing research with people with, like in the United States, maybe you want to do research on Hispanic populations. If you're interested in being an expert in specific demographic groups, there are actually opportunities both in the corporate research side and on the supplier side. On the supplier side, there's some really interesting companies that have either the whole company is focused on a demographic group or they have a division that focuses on a demographic group. For example, there are some research companies that have teams that focus just on doing research with millennials, and that can be a really cool thing. On the other hand, if you are working for on the corporate side, your brand that you're working for may have specific demographic groups of interest. What they sell may be something that's specifically oriented to different demographic groups, so you may be able to develop that expertise on the corporate side as well. What about your involvement beyond the research? If you're somebody who wants to participate in the implementation of the research results, that is, you've delivered your beautiful research results, are you happy just to hand it off? Or do you want to really be involved in how the organization is going to apply those research results and have an ongoing consultative relationship with the people who are actually applying the research results? Again, this is a generalization, but in my experience, if that's the role you want, you're often better off working on the client side, working in a corporate research and insights team, because there you're more likely to be part of a cross-functional team that's actually not only driving the research project, but then also going to be involved in socializing it throughout the organization, if that's appropriate, and in general, just sort of championing the application of the research results. So if that's something that's important to you, corporate side may be a better fit for you. If you're somebody who likes to always be working on multiple things at the same time, you like working on different projects, maybe in multiple industries all at the same time, you like the variety, you like the diversity. You may be better off working for a full service market research company. If you work for a market research supplier, depending on the company, you'll usually be working on at least 3 to 5 projects at a time. And hopefully they are at different stages, so you're not having to write 5 reports all at the same time. But you could definitely be working on multiple projects at the same time in very diverse spaces. So, for example, I have a friend right now who I was talking to the other day, and she was telling me that right now she's doing a project related to automotive, one related to pharma, and one related to children's products. So, 3 entirely different product categories, but she loves it. She loves that diversity. So, if that's you, working on the supplier side may be a better fit. Now let's talk about your long-term future. Where do you want to be in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? If you see your future outside of market research in the future, if you see yourself maybe going into product management or business intelligence, or if you'd like to pursue an executive level marketing position in the future, you may be better off on the corporate research side. The kind of networking you're going to do and the kind of skill development you're going to have would make for an easier transition into those roles. Also, larger companies often provide great career path opportunities. They often want to keep you engaged, and so they'll give you career path options internally, whether you are interested in lateral moves or vertical moves. So, a lot of big companies do a great job of providing those types of career path options so that you stay engaged with the company. What about the entrepreneurial spirit? If you see yourself in the future wanting to run your own market research company, that's great. In that case, you might be better off working for a market research supplier now. And that's really for two reasons. One, if you work for a market research supplier, you'll learn how to run those kinds of companies. You'll pick up important things about what makes these types of firms successful, what types of things can impede the growth of those types of companies. So you can learn a lot by watching what your management at a full service research company is doing and what they're doing well, and maybe what you think they could be doing better. The other thing is that the networking that you'll get is going to really help you create your first client list. So, just like lawyers often will work for a big law firm for several years and then go open their own practice, you, as a research and insights professional, can work for a full service research agency, do great work, thrill your clients, build a diverse network that would then help you with lead generation for when you decide to start your own company. Now, again, these are just generalizations, and different people are going to have some different opinions, but I think these are really good indications. Hopefully, after listening to this list, you have some idea about which side you might be more satisfied with, what would be a better fit for you. I've also been talking to people to get their opinion on this, and I'd like to share a couple of quotes. So I had the opportunity to talk to Karen Lynch from Insights Now. Karen is one of my absolute favorite qualitative research experts. She also, I'm very lucky, she is also an instructor here at Research Rockstar. And she shared this, her experience in terms of her career path. I've always been on the supplier side, which works for me. I like the breadth of categories I am able to work across. I also am comfortable with the intimacy of small companies versus the vastness of larger corporations. I love that Karen is so specific about this, and she really touches on a couple of really important points there. The company size issue really is an important one for many folks. If you're newer on your career path, this might not be something you've had much experience with. I will tell you that some people love working for big companies, but some people find that they're just too slow and bureaucratic. Now, again, that's a broad generalization, but it can happen. So some people prefer sort of the nimbleness of a small company. But of course, big companies have some serious advantages too. They often have great benefits programs and, again, more opportunities for career paths within the organization. I also asked my good friend Greg Timpany, who's a senior market research consultant. And by the way, if you don't follow Greg on Twitter, you really should. He shares a lot of really great market research information on Twitter. And he shared that typically in agency work, there's little time to go deep into a subject. The flip side to this, depending on how diverse the agency's client base is, will be the opportunity to experience work across multiple industries and with different types of studies, segmentation, positioning, etc. I really love that Greg not only talked about working in different industries, but the different types of studies. I found that to be really helpful in my own career. I've had the opportunity to do pricing research, segmentation, product concept testing, ideation studies, various types of studies related to message testing, ad testing, and so forth. A lot of studies that I have done have really been about understanding specific target markets or specific demographic groups. That kind of diversity is really, for me personally, really fun. I like doing a lot of different types of projects, and that may be something that you'll have more opportunity for on the supply side as opposed to the corporate side. But again, there can be exceptions. I also have two friends who chose not to share their names because of where they work. One is an insights director for a large consumer electronics brand who shared, I work in a corporate insights team and I love my work, but my budget is really tight. When interviewing for a job, ask how research is funded. And what he elaborated on for me is that in his experience working in different teams, sometimes the research and insights team has a large annual budget, but in some cases the centralized budget is very small and the budgeting typically gets funded by other parts of the organization that may actually be the internal client for that research, in which case sometimes the budget negotiations can be time consuming and a little frustrating. So I thought that was a great tip. If you are applying for corporate research jobs, it might be appropriate to ask, well, is there a central budget? How are these types of projects budgeted? To kind of give you an indication of whether or not there is adequate budget. Here's another one. On the supply side, it's easy for deadlines to collide, which can mean working nights and weekends. And that's from a friend of mine who's a senior researcher who works at sort of a mid-sized research firm. I think they have about 50, 60 employees. And I've heard that many times, and I experienced that myself when I ran a research agency. You know, we had 16 people on our team at the research agency, but no matter how well we plan things, a schedule here slips a little bit, a schedule there slips a little bit, and next thing you know, you've got too many deadlines all at once, and some folks are going to end up working nights and weekends because you are in a business that's frankly a consulting business. You know, it's up to you to meet your clients' needs with excellence, and that may sometimes mean working a little bit nights and weekends. So that can be a challenge on working if you choose to work for a market research agency, understanding what their potential is for the expectation of working nights and weekends. I hope this conversation has been useful as you think about where your next best job would be. Would you be best suited for the corporate side or the supplier side? And if this type of topic is of interest to you, please do stay tuned. I've got a few more conversations planned over the next few weeks that will continue delving into career options for those of us in research and insights and what some of the different paths are. Also, for those of you who are Research Rockstar students or are thinking about becoming one, I just want to share with you that we have an amazing course starting on May 8th. This course meets on May 8th and again on the 15th for 90 minutes per session, 3 hours total of classroom time with John Holcomb. John Holcomb is an amazing market research expert who really specializes in helping teams turn data into insights. And I also share with you that this course is specifically about giving you a framework you can use so that you know how to turn that data into insights. I think a lot of folks, we see some research results and we think, wow, that's really interesting, but I'm not really sure what the action is that I can take with that. I'm not really sure how this is going to inspire the end client for this research to use this to either help the organization find a new opportunity or make money or save money, etc. But John has a really specific process that he teaches. And in fact, this class was so popular, we taught it for the first time a few months ago. This is actually the second session. And so some really lovely references from people who took it the first time. We had one student who commented that John did a nice job applying a framework to a topic which could have been very theoretical. So true. The examples throughout were strong and relatable. So he gives you a lot of specific examples. It's not just a fluffy what are insights thing. He really gives you concrete examples. Another student commented that John gave us a process and tool for developing powerful insights. Again, another great testimonial to the fact that this is not a fluffy course. I know you've all read articles about what are insights, but in this case, we're really making it real world for you so that you can actually take your research results from any given project, apply this framework so that you can get to the point where you can, with confidence, deliver an executive summary that is going to inspire action. So do join us. That class is going to start on May 8th, and you can sign up for that class at training.researchrockstar.com. If you have any questions about anything at all, please do contact me or follow me at Research Rocks. And if you did enjoy this video or this podcast, please do like and subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the longer I'll keep the conversation going. Thanks everyone and have a great day.